Although we've escaped from the field and the kitchen, we are totally trapped by the vision of food that has been created for us. We have no control over its production. We have no control over what's available in the marketplace. We've learned to obsess over the consumption of food, and the food chain in the meanwhile, in my view, is really going to hell. I am trying to interest my colleagues in nutrition in paying attention to agriculture. And I would urge you to get your colleagues in agriculture to pay attention to consumers. They have to be educated, not merely reassured, because otherwise I don't think we're going to have any kind of agriculture in the future except one that is of the most high-tech sort controlled by a few industries. So I went back to school with this interest in what the relationship was between the sort of limits to growth notion, the environmental constraints, and food production. You know, when were we going to run out of food and what was going to be the limit and so forth. And so most of my work has been around those issues of looking at all the factors that affect the stability and the long-term viability of the food system. Many years ago, a writer who was interviewing me for a story on obesity came to visit me in my garden on the west bank of the Hudson River. She brought with her a box of Snackwells. Remember those fatless cookies that were the answer to obesity some years ago? Less than a decade, actually. And the writer had me try a Snackwell. I remember two things. I remember that it tasted something like artificial chocolate cotton. And I remember that shortly after I ate the first one, I thought I might have another one. To kill the taste. It was like there was this funny taste, and I thought that would help.
I was born in 1928. There were 800 items in the supermarket. 800. There are now, 60,000, 50,000? God didn't make that many new foods in the interim, you know.
After Omnivore's Dilemma came out, they came to me and said, the question readers all have is like, what should we eat if we care about our health? And I went to her for advice on, Joan, what should we eat? And her advice, she was able to reduce it to 2 words: eat food. And I was like, huh? Eat food? What do you mean? And but in the end, that's what I said. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. But that basic, it was kind of like it blew the top of my head off. Eat food? Because I'd been talking to people for whom it was so much more complicated, who were, talking about nutrition and nutrients and polyphenols and antioxidants and fiber and all these kind of things. And she just kind of like, no, you just have to eat real food and you'll be fine.
The correspondence between good food that's good for you and grown in the right way and improves an environmental niche is truly healthy food. And she was saying that, in the 70s. And I feel like we are just waking up to that, but not yet. Because as you said, people are leaving that out of the definition. I think Joan's wisdom is going to become even more important, prevalent, acknowledged 20 years from now.
I found the testimony from her hearing before the Senate on the nutritional content and advertising for breakfast cereals. Right. Well, I can remember on the Ag Committee several years ago being in a nutrition hearing and fighting with my Republican colleague about why we should be more careful about how we advertise certain products to kids, and realizing, that this goes back to 1972, and just looking at some of her testimony and how clear-eyed she was.
I'll sometimes come across something that Joan wrote in 1983, right? And I'll pick it up and read it and say, this is over 40 years old, but it is showing us what we need to do today. So I think we need to make sure that we keep her writing and her influence alive and well so that we can learn from her, because I do believe she was ahead of her time and the world is catching up with her.
The real connection came around organic. She was so obsessed about that. And I didn't really know deeply what that meant. I learned from her how important that was. And now it's in every conversation I have, everywhere I go.
Long before anybody from academia was willing to say nice things about organic as a method of agriculture, not just organic food, but Joan was saying it.
She was a kindred spirit. We loved her, and because she was in the educational field, and the more people in that venue that understand all of this, the better.
And the other really important thing about Joan is she was always saying, is that the right question?
What do you think Joan might have thought the right question was?
I think she would say the right question is, what is it doing for the health of the planet and the health of the soil? And then believe that that is going to transfer onto human health.
The term web is central to her work. She saw the web of nature, the web of the soil. Now that seems kind of like common knowledge, at least among people who think seriously about food, but it wasn't. So I think she deserves a lot of credit for getting us to think this way. Certainly in my case, she connected a lot of dots for me. And it's hard to imagine, In Defense of Food without her.
Well, it's part of what Joan Gussow in her work always talked about, was to connect the agricultural system to the health and nutrition system as part of one unit. That's food systems thinking. And people who were concerned about food systems thinking, argue, as I would, that you can't talk about the nutritional status of people without understanding how the food is produced.
I know dozens of people who had really, really close relationships with her and were mentored by her. She had a way of sort of encouraging you down this path, and kind of a Johnny Appleseed kind of person to person kind of figure for this work that was really wonderful to watch play out.
But she left an imprint on all of us. So we take a little bit from what she gave us and go with it. I'm pretty sure her students, the people that she met, she's given a little bit of herself in all of us. And the bottom line is to stand up and fight for truth.
When I look at her career and the sort of the truth teller that she was and the blowback that she got, I think of Rachel Carson. I think that Joan was positioned in a very similar way in a field where women were not going to be respected, particularly if they were calling out, the big boys.
What would Joan do?
What would Joan do?
Oh, I could hear her now. Under these circumstances, she would not hold back. She would not hold back. Oh.
Am I an optimist? I have to be. What am I going to do? I'm not going to be here to see it happen anyways, so I just have to hope for the rest of you that it changes. I'm not going to be around forever.